Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host Austin Davidson.
Hello.
We are kicking off Season 5 of the podcast today. Welcome back, all of our listeners, and we're getting right into talking about the pre-draft process. The NFL's Combine has just concluded, and as is typically the case around this time, we start to ramp up our pre-draft coverage, and we start looking at players from every position and a bunch of different schools, and we start to try to analyze them and, find out a little bit more about these guys that are going to be available in April. And over the last couple of years, I think we've gotten a little bit better. We've been able to get more players under our belt, and we've gotten a little bit better at figuring out exactly who the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be taking, or at least have an idea of who they're going to be going after. But as has been the case the last 3 years, we've looked at specialists first because we learned in our first pre-draft process that kickers, punters, and even long snappers have the opportunity to be drafted. And of course, with the infamous Colin Holba, as you remember, Austin, we learned with that pick that we have to be ready for everything. Did we lose Austin there, I wonder? Hello?
Hello?
Did you hear me?
Okay, so where it left off, right? It was just, what's it called? It was cutting out. And it said I heard you say the infamous Colin Holba, and then it went silent, and then it was silent for a while. It's like, oh, he must have passed it to me, but I don't know what he said.
Gotcha.
So that's what just happened.
Well, I was saying
it's like
that,
cutting out a little bit.
Well, that's unfortunate, but hopefully it gets better. What I was saying was, with that infamous pick, we kind of learned that we have to be ready for everything, which is why we start with specialists, including the long snappers, along with the punters and kickers.
It makes sense. It's usually the least important position, but you still have to cover it just in case. You never know when a long snapper is going to be drafted in the 6th round.
So, yeah, with the fact of the matter being that these positions are typically not addressed, or they're addressed least often compared to any other positions, we figured it would still be appropriate to go over at least one player or two players of each position. So that's what we're going to start with today. But before we get into those players, we're going to start with talking about what the Steelers currently have. And, of course, they'll be added to for the offseason roster. But last year, the Steelers had one kicker, punter, and long snapper. And, of course, let's start with Chris Boswell, the kicker. He had a Pro Bowl season in 2017, followed that up with what was probably the worst season kicker had in 2018. He missed the most kicks in the NFL. Ended it on injured reserve, and bounced back in a big way in 2019. He had one of the best years of his career, very accurate, and I think he only missed like 3 kicks, and one of them was due to a bad snap. I'll have to double-check his statistics. He was very good, and he's got 3 years left on his deal. So when talking about the kicking situation with Boswell, what do you think about where he's at right now, and what do you think we're going to see from him in 2020? Are you worried about regression? Where are you at right now in Chris Boswell?
I like where he's at. I think that he had a good bounce-back year, and I think going forward, I'm hoping not to see some cyclical cycle where one year he's great and then next year he's bad. I wouldn't project that for him. I think that he's going to be just fine going forward and continue being great like he was in this past season where he bounced back. So I feel good about Chris Boswell going forward. How about you? I
feel pretty good as well. Boswell on the season, he made 93.5%. He only missed 2 kicks last year. So he missed 7, or field goals, I should say. He missed 7 the previous season. So definitely a big bounce back year. I really think 2018 was something just isolated. If you look at 2019 and 2017, he did play obviously pretty well, but I think it's quite clear that when a kicker's had struggles like he's had in a season, the microscope is obviously shown on them. So any misses that he makes, if he comes out of the gate slow, it's possible we could have another bad year, but I think all things considered, he's going to be pretty solid. So I'm not that worried about replacing Boswell at this point.
Agree.
All right, as far as the punter goes, Jordan Berry, he has 1 year remaining from a 2-year deal worth just over $2 million. Berry had Berry, for that matter, he's had a very interesting career. He's been up and down. He was down for a few years. I believe his first year. So, believe it or not, this is Berry's, 5th year with the team? He's been with the team now 5 seasons. It feels like he hasn't been there that long, but sure enough, he has. And his first year with the team was pretty good. He had a pretty good average, and then he was kind of below league average for 3 years. And then he jumped back up this past year. Let me back up here. He struggled in 2015. He had a good 2016, then had 2 average years. And then this past year, he was really good for about 14, 15 games. And then the last 3 games of the season, 13 games. And then he struggled the last 3 games of the year, starting with that horribly messed up fake punt in Arizona, and ever since, from that point on, he was really struggling. So where are you at with Jordan Berry right now? He's had an up and down career to this point, but what we saw from him early on in 2019, in fact the first 3 quarters of the year, was one of the top 10 seasons by a Steelers punter ever, and then it just went down the crapper.
It was really unfortunate because Jordan Berry was having a season. Like, he was playing at a Pro Bowl level, probably not the best for major for the first half of the season, and for a little bit past then, and it just kind of came downhill, and it makes him very much replaceable with only 1 year left. He definitely can be challenged, but the question remains, can anyone ever beat him out? Like, Matt Weil had a great try against him in training camp and preseason 2 seasons ago, and it just, it seemed like Matt Weil was the better punter in every statistical category, and it didn't matter. Jordan Berry won out because of the familiarity. So I think Berry can be replaced, and this is coming off of a really good season. It's just because he's just up and down. It's just how he goes. But I don't think he will be replaced. I think he will be the Steelers' starting punter in week 1.
I think it's going to take a draft pick to replace him, and I don't see the Steelers doing that.
I agree with that. I think it can't just be some guy picked up off the street. It has to be a guy drafted within reason.
Who do you think he's going to be closer to in 2020? The guy we saw in the first 13 games, or the guy we saw in the last 3 or 4?
Oh, I'm going to say the guy that we saw in the last 3 or 4, and I have a reason, statistically. So I think that the offense is going to do much better next year, giving him, when he does punt, I think it's going to be in shorter range situations. So his stats are going to be a little bit shortened again when the Steelers are actually getting to the 50-yard line and having to punt. So I think that his stats aren't going to be as good because a part of the reason why his stats were better this year is the offense struggled so much. Berry was able to really leg it because when a drive stalls at the 20 10 times a game, you're going to be able to boom a punt every single time. And we got to see his leg and him actually be able to use it in those sort of situations a lot more. So I think that going into next year, his stats are going to reflect the guy in the last 3-4. And I don't know if that's exactly fair because I think he could still be playing at a high level, but I don't think his stats are going to be anywhere near where they were this year.
One positive to take from his season last year is that even though he was punting from not really ideal positions, not getting as many chances to pin the opponent deep in their own territory, he still had 24 punts down to inside the 20-yard line, which even though it's the lowest number of his career high is 28, so he was only 4 punts off that, and he did finish with a career high in touchbacks at 4, but his career low is 2. So there's not a huge variance there from top to bottom. So I think it is a little encouraging, but what's tough, the tough answer to that question, Austin, is the peaks and valleys Berry saw last year were, if you look at Boswell's peaks and valleys over the past 3 seasons, Berry basically experienced that over the course of 1 year. I mean, he looked like one of the best punters in the league for most of the year, and then all I can think about is that Ravens game where he dropped the punt, or dropped the snap, and couldn't get the punt off. That was some of the ugliest punting plays I've ever seen a punter make, and he was just all over the place at the very end. I really don't know what we're going to get from him.
It's going to be interesting to see how he goes into the 20 compares and stuff, because it just, every year it feels like it's just been cyclical, ups and downs. I hope that he comes into this like one of the last seasons where the Steelers have a open Super Bowl window. I hope he comes in as one of his best seasons.
And then the last part of the puzzle is the currently restricted free agent, Cameron Canaday, the long snapper. There's obviously not a lot to talk about with the long snapper. He's had somewhat mixed results, though, since he took over for the retired Greg Warren in 2017. Do you think he's a candidate that's most likely to be replaced next season?
I believe so. It's there's a possibility that the Steelers could let him go into for a cheaper option, or maybe a guy that's in this draft. Because I feel like he's not been. I feel like he wasn't worth letting Greg Warren go. I feel like he's done decently enough. I haven't heard his name, which I feel like the Greg Warren usually finished with a tackle or two or something, and he didn't have any tackles this year. He had 0 on special teams, and he was one of the few punters in the NFL. I'm sorry, punters. One of the few long snappers in the NFL to do that. So I feel like it could be improved, and I feel like it could be gotten for a better price. Because I feel like there's also been a few like errant snaps as well. So I suppose, especially with him being like a restricted free agent.
I need to know what the going rate would be if you tender him. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't tender someone like that. You probably just offer him an extension.
I think so, too. I think there's no reason to tender him.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, all that being said, your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10 for the special teams going into next year is?
I think that kicker is the most important position, and that's where the Steelers have their best guys. So I'll give it a solid 7.5. I think 7.5 is a good. I mean, granted, Chris Boswell had a really great season 3 seasons ago, and then just fell out of nowhere. But you can't expect the unexpected. That's what makes it unexpected. So I'm still going to go in with the idea that he'll be great. So I'll give it a 7.5, which is probably a little bit too optimistic, but I'll stick with it. What do you got?
I'll go with just a straight 7. I like the guys the Steelers have right now, at least to a certain extent. I'm not as down on them as I was last season. So, that being said, we have 6 prospects in total to look at today. 2 at kicker, 2 at punter, and 2 at long snapper. Austin, who would you like to start with first? What position group? And would you like to go first, or do you want me to go first? How do you want to start this?
Let's start with long snapper, and I'll go first. Why not? Right. I just like talking about long snappers. So the first long snapper prospect I have is Blake Ferguson. He's a long snapper at LSU. He's 6'3" and 229 pounds. He was long snapping for the LSU Tigers has been a family thing for the Fergusons, with Blake taking over for his brother Reed after Reed left for the NFL following the 2015 season. And Reed currently plays for the Buffalo Bills. So LSU has had a Ferguson at long snapper for 8 straight years. Blake joined the team as a redshirt freshman in 2015 after being named the top high school long snapper in the country as a junior and senior in Georgia. In both 2018 and 2019, he was a team captain and now looks to take his talents to the NFL. So I'm going to start with his positives. And starting with outside of football, he has a desirable character you would want, showing leadership in the locker room as a captain in the past 2 seasons and working off the field at a lot of charity and community events to raise awareness for diabetes, which I should mention he has type 1 diabetes. So he likes to raise awareness for it and work at charities and stuff that involve that. So I figured that I should mention that. Then when it comes to long snapping, he was able to work on it in college for 5 years with 4 years as a starter. And as I said earlier, he has a brother that has made it in the NFL as a long snapper. So he could possibly even get more help from his brother. Then when it comes to his snaps, he's been consistently good with the placement of the ball on field goal attempts and is able to get the lace perfect frequently while slinging it back fast to the holder or punter without much hitch. Then on the negative side, at 6'3", 229 pounds, it's a little bit low in the poundage department, and there's room for improvement there to be an NFL player. But the reason he has been at such a low mass in college is because he didn't play any other position, so he didn't really need to get bigger. And having that lack of versatility as like even just a emergency option does hurt a little. As even Cameron Canaday, when he was signed back in February of 2017, he was signed as a linebacker. His official title wasn't long snapper; it was linebacker. Not that we've ever seen Cameron Canaday get anywhere close to linebacker. Still. Then last two things are his third average, and in 2019, there seemed to be an issue with some low snaps specifically on punts, not really on field goals, just on punts. So that's going to be something to look out for. So overall, if there's a long snapper going to be drafted, it's going to be Ferguson. It's as simple as that. He's done it very well throughout his college career. He got to do it as a starter for 4 years, including as a part of the 2019 championship Tigers. So despite that in his ties to the NFL, I don't think Ferguson will be drafted. Maybe if he didn't have some low snap issues on punts this past season, he would have been late round 7. But I really don't think a long snapper is going to be taken in this class. I feel like this is a very deep class in a lot of positions. I think that this is not going to be a priority for teams, so I don't believe he will be drafted. However, he will be a priority undrafted free agent, being the best available at his position. So that's going to be very desired bringing him to camp. So I 100% know he's going to be on a training camp roster, without a doubt in my head.
Do you think there's any chance he ends up in Pittsburgh at all?
There's a chance. I think that for sure, because the Steelers could be having a long snapper battle every single year if they wanted to, because it's not like Canada's job is secure. Greg Warren's job wasn't secure. So I feel like there's a chance.
I thought he had an injury or something like that. I can't remember. It was so much longer ago than I thought it was. It was back in 2016 was his last season. I forgot exactly what happened.
I could have sworn it was just a camp battle and that Canada just ended up winning out. At least that's what I thought.
Well, either way, it was the last that was it for Warren. So that's we've seen the end of the line for guys in their career when they've lost position battles like this.
Man, exactly. So I think Ferguson's going to be brought into a camp. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Pittsburgh if Pittsburgh wants to bring him in.
Alrighty then. Man, that's interesting. LSU had the best quarterback last year. They won the national championship. They have guys all over that team going to the NFL, and their long snapper is no exception to that. That's pretty impressive. So the long snapper I'm looking at is Steve Wirtel from Iowa State. He's a senior, weighing in at 6'4" and 235 pounds. So Wirtel, much like Ferguson, they've got family ties to the long snapping industry. His brother John, Steve's brother John, played at Kansas from 2014 to 2018 and spent time with the Chicago Bears last year. So now Steve is getting his own shot to make it, and he left his mark at Iowa State. He played in every single game over his 4-year span at Iowa State and was named first-team All-Big 12 each of his final 2 seasons and was a third-team selection his sophomore season. And he was also a Manley Award finalist, which is the award for best long snapper in the nation. So obviously he was a guy that was accomplished in his collegiate career. As I already said, he never missed a game in his collegiate career, so that's pretty good. Continuing with some positives, his brother did the same thing at Kansas, so he's got the bloodlines to do it, and he's relatively athletic based on reports, and he's got the want to that you want to see out of your long snapper, because even though your long snapper's primary duty is snapping the football quickly and accurately, you also need to count on him as being a coverage guy, because he does have to go down and field punts as well. And scouts noted that he has consistent placement on his field goal snaps, which is obviously very good. And then as far as his negatives go, he's considered slightly underweight at 235 pounds for his frame. That's something I feel like we see with a lot of long snappers coming out of college, and he's no exception there. Snapping speed on punts is average at best, according to scouts and NFL.com's Lance Zierlein. So playing in windy cities like Chicago could pose a problem if you don't have good speed on these punt snaps. The ball could be taken away, could be pushed a little bit more than it normally would be if you have a faster snapper. And his spirals on punt snaps are inconsistent, which means that it's also going to hurt the accuracy as well. So when it comes down to it, I think it's quite clear that Ferguson, the long snapper Austin had been looking at, is a superior player, but Wirtel is a guy that has a very accomplished college career, and he's got the bloodlines that has proven to be able to get it done in his family and his career. Long snappers are rarely drafted. I would usually never expect to see one, and there's going to be a lot of UDFAs available. But like Austin said, if there is one that's going to be taken, I would imagine it's going to be Mr. Ferguson from LSU. So Wordle's probably going to be one of those undrafted free agents that teams take a chance on. And I think he'll have a good chance to make a team, but I do think that teams are going to be concerned about his size at first, and maybe you see him catch on with the team. Maybe not this year, but the following year. He's an interesting prospect, but at the end of the day, he's a long snapper and he's not the top guy, so he's probably going to be looking to sign with a team following the draft. So, having concluded our long snappers, where do you want to go now, kicker or punter?
Let us take it to punter. Do you want to go for your punter, or you want me to go first?
I'll go with my punter first, just because your guy Blake Ferguson kind of headlined the long snappers. My punter, Michael Turk, kind of headlines all the punters. So the name Turk is probably familiar to people listening, and if it sounds familiar, that's because you might remember his uncle Matt Turk, who punted in the NFL for 19 years. But this is also interesting, Austin. His late father also played in the NFL. As a matter of fact, his father, what was his name? It wasn't Ben. Ben is someone else. What was his name? I'm going to have to look this up real quick because now it's bothering me.
I don't know it offhand.
His father is Dan Turk. That was his name. Okay. Because I was thinking of Ben, but I know that's not right. So Dan Turk was drafted by the Steelers in the 4th round of the 1984 draft, and in 1986, his first start at center was historic because it marked the end of future Hall of Famer Mike Webster's 150 consecutive starts for the Steelers. So how about that? Little bit of a Steelers connection right there.
Oh, he was the guy right after. That's kind of crazy.
So Michael Turk established himself early in his collegiate career at FCS school Lafayette. He earned all-conference honors in 2017. He had 18 punts down inside the opponent's 20 with just 3 touchbacks. He transferred to Arizona State in 2018 and didn't play because of the transfer rules. And in his only year at ASU this past year as a player, he led the Pac-12 in punting average with over 46 yards per punt, had 32 punts down inside the 20, and had 6 touchbacks. He earned first-team All-Pac-12 honors. So if you were paying attention to the Combine, you think about positives, you probably saw that he had 25 bench reps, which of the 129 players that did the bench at the Combine, his 25 reps is tied for 26th out of 129 total players. The dude is jacked, and that's just insane. Like, you think about that, 225 pounds benching that. The most I ever did it was once, and this dude's pumping it out 25. This is a punter. He's just like, he reminds me of Steve Weatherford, the former chiseled punter for the Giants. I don't know if you remember him.
I remember that, man. That picture of him going around and saying he's a punter went viral for a while.
But in any case, Turk has got obviously a very strong body and very strong legs too. And he just destroys the ball in open field punts. According to Lance Zierlein on NFL.com, he averaged 51.8 yards on gross average punts. So he can flip the field for you. And obviously with his connection to his uncle Matt, he was a former All-Pro punter. He's got a great coach with him too. Scouts also noted that he operates pretty quickly, so he doesn't give the opposing rush a chance to block the punt. And even though he doesn't have great hang time, he has solid hang time, which for his very deep punts is something you're going to need, but it should improve with experience. On the flip side, some negatives to look at with him. When you have just average hang time and a quick operation getting the punt out quickly, on top of the fact that his leg is so powerful, Turk has a tendency to outkick his coverage teams, which leads to big returns. Until he can learn how to get more hang time on his punts, he's going to have to learn to take a little bit off his fastball, ease up a little bit. And directional kicking is an issue for him. He's not very good at placing the ball right now, and he sends way too many punts through the end zone with his strong leg. So he's just kind of undisciplined right now, and he's learning how to be a more accurate punter. He's also not a very disciplined punt coverage guy. Usually the punter has to be the last line of defense. He's a little too aggressive, and that'll leave his coverage team open to possibly bigger returns if he's out of position. So when you're looking at Michael Turk, he's probably got the best body of work of any punter eligible for the draft this year. He's obviously got the physical tools that anybody would need to succeed as an NFL punter, and he has the NFL bloodlines. His game does lack a certain control at this point, and it's strange. He probably could have benefited from more experience in college, but the leg being as strong as it is, teams are probably going to have a tough time staying away from Turk if they're in need of a punter. They usually don't get drafted punters, maybe at 1 or 2 in the NFL draft, but Turk might be the exception. I think he probably is the best punter in the draft. I obviously looked at him more than any others. If he does get drafted, I suspect it'll be a late day 3 pick sometime in the 6th round on, because that's usually when you see punters getting taken. But I do think Turk is the best of this group going into the NFL draft, and he's definitely got the physical tools that make you say, wow. But, not good at directional kicks, so there's no way he's ending up in Pittsburgh, let me tell you that.
No, though, not with the Pittsburgh thing, but I looked at I forget his first name, but Utah's Wisnowski last season. I thought he was going to be a 7th rounder at best, and the 49ers decided, hey, man, you want to use a 4th rounder on a punter? And they said, heck yeah, let's do it. And then they drafted Wisnowski in the 4th round. And he did solid for the 49ers, actually. It's better than I expected. But so the best punters sometimes can go a little earlier than expected. You never know with the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, my punting prospect is Sterling Hofrichter of Syracuse. He is 5'10", 196 pounds. Coming out of high school, Hofrichter was named as the 6th best kicker and 9th best punter, and ended up joining Syracuse as the punter for the 2015 season, where he redshirted. Following year, Hofrichter had some pretty big shoes to fill after 4-time Ray Guy Award candidate Ryan Dixon, currently on the Giants, left for the NFL. In the year, he was named first-team freshman All-American after having the 2nd most punting yards in the season in school history, tied for 3rd in the ACC in punts within the 20, and was tied for the lead in punts of 50-plus yards in the ACC with Mike Knoll of Boston College. In his sophomore year, he was a Ray Guy Award candidate and Syracuse's special team captain, the 5th in the team's history. His punting average of 43.2 ranked 7th in the ACC, and only had 9 of his 57 punts being returned, with 20 of all the punts being within the opponent's 20-yard line. In his junior year, he was All-ACC first team and was yet again a candidate for the Ray Guy Award after ranking 2nd in the ACC in gross punting average and having 26 of 67 punts go inside the 20-yard line. In his final season, he was named first-team All-American after leading the ACC in net punting average at 43.03 and 22 punts being down within the 20. So starting off with the positives, he is versatile. He was a 4-year starting punter at Syracuse, and as I said, in high school, he was actually named a better kicker than punter, and also handled kickoff duties for the final 2 seasons where he had a solid touchback rate of 62%. He also offers emergency field goal help, having made 3 of 4 field goals in his career. And this is what got me. I was expecting, okay, they probably used him for like a 32-yarder, a 33-yarder, some short kicks. No, one of those 3 that he made was a 52-yarder, so he can kick it. And I'll say that now. He made a longer field goal than my actual kicking prospect I looked at today in his career. So I just want to say how impressive that is to me. I was not expecting that when I read that. Then with the way he punts, he has a really solid drop to toe time, above average for college punters. In fact, and he has been good with directional punts and excellent getting a lot of hang time from his punts. Then finally, Hofrichter plays with an aggressive mentality, being a willing and able tackler if it becomes necessary. He's a little small for a punter, sitting at only 5'10", 196, but he does still have that aggressiveness to still try. And that kind of I basically just gave you the biggest negative right there, is that he's small, even for an NFL punter, sitting at just 5'10". Jordan Berry towers over him at 6'5". So then, while not all on him, he had 2 punt returns returned for a touchdown during his career at Syracuse. Then I had to put a warning here. This was listed as a negative by someone else. I'm just copying over because I guess it is something that someone can worry about if they're looking at it. So him getting aggressive as a punter could be a double-edged sword. It could make him more likely to get injured, and with only 1 punter on the roster, it could be a risk. But I hate that mentality. It only should be mentioned if he has been hurt that way before, and Hofrichter does not have an injury history. So I think it's a little dumb, but it will be mentioned that his aggressiveness could get him hurt. But that any given play, a football player can get hurt. Anyhow, overall, Hofrichter's drawn comparisons to Michael Palladay, which I could see given his size. And Palladay has had a successful career with the Panthers, even though it took a very long time to get his career going. I believe Palladay's been in the NFL since 2012. Excuse me, 2012. But he bounced around so many teams, including the Panthers before the 2017 time. He had never gotten a foothold until 2017, and then he was able to take over after Andy Lee got hurt, then traded, or maybe he wasn't hurt. I feel like Andy Lee was hurt. I know he got traded, but regardless, Palladay had a successful career, has had a successful career despite his size, so that bodes well, and that's his only real negative for Hofrichter. I like the kid. He's no Michael Dixon, but with his versatility, he's definitely going to be ending on the team's training camp. I don't believe he will be drafted. Michael Turk is probably going to be the only one drafted in this class, the only punter, but he's definitely a priority undrafted free agent for teams. So, again, that was Sterling Hofrichter of Syracuse. Now let's hear about your kicking prospect.
Hofrichter played well in the NFLPA Bowl, too, by the way. I don't know if you got a chance to see that.
Didn't see that.
He did play pretty well. He had a good punt at the end of the game. But let's get to the kicker. So my kicking prospect, I know that this is our first kind of episode talking about the prospects. He might have my favorite name of anyone in this draft class. His name is Jet Toner, and I've affectionately nicknamed him the Printer because of that. So from here on out, if I refer to someone as the Printer, you should know that I'm talking about Jet Toner. Just thought you should know.
Incredible. I love that name. It's incredible. I wonder if his parents knew what they were doing when they named it. I wonder if...
Well, his name is John. His name is actually John, but he goes by Jet for some reason. Jet Toner.
Okay.
So
all right.
I'm not sure where the Jet comes from, but I love it, and I guess there could be a better nickname than the Printer, but I think that's just so awkward and strange that it's perfect. So, but
hilarious. I love it.
In any case, Jet Toner, a redshirt senior from Stanford, standing at 6'4" and 201 pounds. He was a two-time All Pac-12 selection. Once he made second team in 2018 and was an honorable mention in 2017. He was a two-time Lou Groza Award Star of the Week, which is essentially kicker of the week in the country. He is a single-season record holder for Stanford in field goal percentage. He was 14-15 in 2018. And he was the Pac-12 Special Teams Player of the Week once last season for his game-winning kick at Oregon State as time was expiring. So the Printer is pretty much deadly accurate on kicks under 45 yards. He only missed 3 kicks under 40 yards the last 2 seasons, and he only missed 10 kicks in his entire career. He does have the ability to make clutch kicks. You see his game winner against Oregon State last year, and he also kicked a game-tying field goal against Oregon in 2018 with the clock expiring. Both that and the Oregon State kick were on the road, so he doesn't get rattled by those kicks on the road. And he also never missed an extra point in college, which is the old extra point, which is basically a 20-yard field goal. But to attempt 101 and make 101, that's still pretty impressive, especially for a young guy like him. Now, even though I said all those good things, the big issue with him, which you see with a lot of college kids, is that the leg strength is definitely a question mark. Would you say Sterling Hofrichter made a 52-yarder?
He made a 52-yarder.
His career long is longer than the Printer's. The Printer's career long is 51 yards. So
both our kickers had a shorter long than the one punter I looked at. That's incredible.
Yeah. And Toner only made that one 50-plus yard field goal that was his entire career, his only 50-yard field goal made. As a matter of fact, it wasn't like he had a ton of tries either. He only attempted 3 kicks of 50-plus yards, which means that the coaching staff didn't necessarily trust him on these long kicks. And of the 10 field goals he missed in his career, 5 of them came from 40-plus yards out. So his previous career long, besides that 51-yarder, was 46. So you see that once you get beyond 45 yards, the leg strength is really a question. And also, he suffered a strange setback in his senior season. He had the fourth worst field goal percentage of his career at 75%. Now, he only attempted 16 kicks, so he still made 12, but that was a strange drop-off. And one last negative for him is that he suffered an injury to his kicking leg in October, and he was out the rest of the year. I couldn't find what it was. I tried looking back through news articles. It was not explained exactly what it was, but I'm not sure if it's something that could cause him to miss time in the offseason or if he'll miss time in training camp. I don't know what's going on. But overall, Jet the Printer Toner reminds me a lot of a Sean Sweesum light. He's accurate and clutch, as long as you're looking for a kick under 45 yards. The problem is if you need to make a kick from a deeper range, he rarely succeeded with those types of kicks, and he barely attempted it at all. That's a huge concern for me, and given all the kickers cycling around the league, I find it more likely that Toner becomes the next Matt McCrane or Matthew Wright as opposed to Sean Sweesum. And I hope I'm wrong because he's got the coolest name in the draft this year, but I think we're just facing reality. He'll be in camp somewhere, but I don't see, unless if he can somehow improve that leg strength over time, I don't see him being more than just a practice squad guy at best.
Man, I can see that. I think that, what's it called? A lot of the kickers in this draft aren't very good. I was looking at them and I was just kind of like, I don't know if like a good kicker is really going to come out of this draft. But anyhow, my kicker is Tyler Bass. He's the kicker at Georgia Southern. He is 5'10" and 185 pounds. Coming out of high school, Bass is named the best kicker in the country by highly respected specialist trainer Chris Saylor back in 2014. Bass didn't get to play until 2016, though, and in a very limited fashion, where he did kickoffs and attempted 7 extra points, making 6. In his sophomore season, he was able to get a lot more playing time, earning second-team All-Sun Belt accolades, making 27 of his 28 attempted extra points and 15 of his 19 field goals with a long of 48. In his junior year, he got up to first-team All-Conference status, making all 45 of his extra point attempts and 19 of his 21 field goals with a long of 50. This includes a game-winning kick in the Camila Bowl against the Eastern Michigan Eagles. And then as a senior, he regressed a little bit, specifically when it came to field goals, and only got a second-team conference pick after making only 20 of his 28 field goal attempts with a long of 49. However, he hit all 36 of his extra point attempts, and those 20 made field goals still set the school record for the most field goals in the season, and that includes a walk-off field goal against Southern Alabama. With no more years of college eligibility as declared for the draft. And the good thing about Bass is that on kicks between 30 to 50 yards, he was pretty consistent in his last season, hitting 93% of them. Part of this is because he could elevate end-over-end kicks to improve his intermediate accuracy, allowing for him to be better at these somewhat more intermediate ranges. Then on kickoffs is where he really excels, I think. He took on kickoffs all 4 years at Georgia Southern and regularly boomed them to the back of the end zone, only allowing 9 returns all year. The thing is, he comes up to his kicks with a consistent approach and solid tempo every single time, so something to keep in mind. Going to the other side, he's relatively small for an NFL guy at only 5'10", 185 pounds. For comparison, Boswell is at 6'2" and 185 pounds. Really, his height is what's small, and that limits leg length, of course, and that's sort of important to a kicker, is how long your leg is and how big of a swing you have. Anyhow, my biggest concern with Bass is that his career field goal percentage was only 77.4%, and though missing those 8 kicks in his final season was pretty bad in my eyes. Granted, it was the most field goals made in the season by his team, Georgia Southern, but I didn't like him missing those 8 kicks. And he seems to have maxed out at the 50-yard range with his shorter legs. And all of his years, he didn't prove that he could really get farther than that. He also showed a lot of struggling in bad weather, so that's a big concern as well when you're playing outside of a dome, which is mostly NFL. Then finally, he doesn't explode his hips with the football, which could also contribute to why he seems to max out at 50 yards. So overall, Bass played on a not very high-profile team, but good thing for specialists and him that hardly matters when it comes to his position. He shows all the great things on kickoffs, but when it comes to kicking long field goals, he seems like he maxed out at 50. Despite being able to boom kicks on kickoffs, too. It just seems weird that he can kick do kickoffs really, really well, really boom those, and just can't really get a good leg on the field goals. Different styles, different types of play, but still. Maybe working with an NFL special teams coordinator will be able to help him with that, thus making Bass an interesting option. Personally, I think he will go in the 7th round because he has potential. I think he'd immediately come in and improve his team's kickoff abilities, and for now he's pretty consistent from intermediate range. So I think he's one of the few kickers drafted, but I will not be surprised to see him brought in as an undrafted free agent to a team. I'm not exactly sold on him being a drafted player. I just think that teams look at it and say, well, there's a lot of potential in this kid, and he already has kickoffs down. If we could just get him to get a little bit more leg, and because he's also solid on the intermediate kicks, that he could be an interesting option to bring into camp. So that was Tyler Bass out of Georgia Southern, and that wraps up all my prospects.
So what did you say his kickoff, what was his touchback, how many touchbacks did he have on kickoffs last year?
Well, let us see. I literally just lost it, but I can get it back really quick, and oh no. I guess I can't get it back quick.
That's okay. Take your time. I was just thinking because Jet Toner had 12 touchbacks on 30 kickoffs last year, I believe.
Did I not write it down? Why am I confused? What, am I just confusing him with Hofrichter? Because I had Hofrichter's down for sure.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. But
and I didn't have his percentage down.
I think it's interesting though that you mentioned that he doesn't really explode his hips enough, and he does get the deep range on those kickoffs, which leads me, like you were saying, to believe that he does have that power. It just needs to be unlocked. Whereas with Mr. Toner, I'm not necessarily sure that he has that extra power waiting in the wings.
And it's just I was confused. I didn't know if he was maxed out or not. I just thought.
Well, regardless, why don't we check out what's as far as you think? Who do you think the best prospects are in terms of how do you like them the most?
I liked Hofrichter a lot. He is probably an undrafted free agent. He offers a lot of versatility, and with Barrett being somewhat inconsistent, I think that he is probably the position of most need for the Steelers out of these 3 positions, assuming Canada just comes back. So I think that Hofrichter would be an interesting camp option as an undrafted free agent. So I liked him a lot. Ferguson was also pretty cool. Bass was the only one that I didn't really mess with. He's an interesting option for other teams, but the fact that I think he might take a 7th round pick isn't worth it for me for whether he fits with the Steelers, because it would just be an interesting option for just don't really need. So I liked Hofrichter and Ferguson a lot more than Bass.
Yeah, for me, it's a little different ranking them because they're not different. They're all different positions, but I really was a big fan of Michael Turk. It's hard to not be. He's got the bloodlines, he's got the physical tools, and with more experience, he should continue to improve. I think he's going to be a punter in this league for a while. I like Steve Wirtle. I don't love him. You don't get 32 different long snappers coming out every year that make it to the NFL. I think he could have a chance, but I think it's fringe whether or not he'll be in the league for a long time. Time will tell. And even though I love Jet Toner, I'm not sure that he's going to be able to make it in the NFL. He just doesn't have the leg, and I didn't see anything showing that he could potentially be getting stronger with that leg. And now that he suffered an injury, I'm concerned that he's not going to be up to snuff compared to the other prospects. So that's how I see my guys. Do we see any of this? Do we see the Steelers adding any of these positions in the draft? Or as an undrafted free agent to take over? Because I don't.
I don't think they're going to draft one. I think that they could add some of these positions as undrafted free agents. I'm sure that they usually bring a second kicker into camp. I feel like it just won't be Chris Boswell, even though Chris Boswell won't lose the job. I feel like they'll have a second one. I think that they'll eventually get a second punter, but I don't know if it's going to be an undrafted free agent from this class. They might just get an older guy that's been in the league for a while just to come in for camp. But I think it's totally possible. I'm not seeing the long snapper right now. I think Cameron Canada is going to be signed back. I don't think they're going to bring a second long snapper in.
I think they're always going to have at least 2 of each position. Because remember, they had Trevor Wood, the tight end last year, who was also a long snapper. but I don't think anyone that's going to be added is going to be a real threat, if that makes sense.
I agree with that.
All right. Any closing thoughts on those guys?
Oh.
Alrighty then. Let's move into Steelers NFL news. Where do you want to start?
So we could talk about the franchise tag stuff.
Okay, so with the CBA having not been ratified yet, teams are starting to act on their free agents in anticipation of it not being passed. So the Bengals have tagged A.J. Green. The receiver has only played in one of the team's last 24 games, but with Joe Burrow coming in, it's quite clear that they're going to want him helping with his development. And Green, when he has been healthy, has been one of the best receivers in the NFL.
Kind of funny that apparently Joe Burrow told them to tag AJ Green. That's been a story going around. I don't know how true it is, but I love that. I love that Burrow's like, please don't let me out here to die.
The Jaguars are expected to tag edge rusher Yannick Ngakoue. Ngakoue has said he's not going to sign an extension with the team, so maybe the Jaguars are just posturing. They might trade him, or maybe they're just going to hold on to him and let him walk next year.
It's very interesting when a player is so upfront about not wanting. It's not. This isn't like Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell said, "I want my money. I don't care where I play." Ngakoue said no. He said, "He's like, I have no desire to sign a long-term deal with the Jaguars." He said that straight up. This isn't speculation. He tweeted it. He said, "I don't want to sign a long-term deal with the Jaguars. They know that. I don't want to be franchise tag." He doesn't want to be there at all. It's not the money. There's something wrong. There's bad blood there. There's something wrong there. So I find the decision by the Jaguars to franchise tag him questionable. I think they're going to trade him. I think that's what's going to happen. I think they could get a third-round pick for it. So I think they're going to try and trade him for a third-round pick so they don't have to wait for the comp pick next year. Because, Le'Veon Bell, he tweeted about Le'Veon Bell, too. Le'Veon Bell stayed away from the team, and it was just about the money. If Yannick doesn't like someone there or there's a problem there, I can't imagine him showing up. Like, it's just not going to happen. So I found that one to be interesting when he specifically said, like, I am not going to sign a long-term deal with the Jaguars.
If he is trying to get the team to trade him, I think coming out and saying that is not smart just because it tanks your own trade value.
He hasn't said that yet, though. He just said he doesn't want to play with the Jaguars. So I guess that is that much. We'll probably see. You know what we're probably going to see? The Jaguars don't find a trading suitor that they just remove the franchise tag like the Panthers did with Josh Norman.
Oh, they rescind it, you think?
They could. I think that's going to... Ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of this that's what happens, because otherwise he's not going to show up. And then what are they going to do? Wait for the comp pick 2 years from now? They might... If they can't trade him, they might as well get the...
They wouldn't get that comp pick till next year, though. I think there's a chance they might just hold on to him, period.
You just screw him over that way.
I could see it.
I suppose.
Owners are petty, man.
True.
The Redskins also franchise tagged offensive tackle Brandon Sheriff. Nothing really to add there. Whatever happened with what was his name? The tackle
Williams?
there. Yeah. Whatever happened with him?
There's been talks, and he's actually might come back to the Redskins. They said he wants his money, and if he doesn't get it, he wants a trade. But like with Ron Rivera coming in, he eased his stance because he said he was never coming back to the Redskins. And then they fired their head coach, obviously, and Ron Rivera's in there now. And he sat down and talked to Ron Rivera and said, "Listen, like I'll come back if you pay me now. Now it's just a matter of I want to be paid." So right now there is an answer to what's happening with Trent Williams, but he's on better terms with the Redskins than he was like 6 months ago.
I'm looking at a headline that said his salary from the Washington Times. Williams' salary demands might force Redskins' hand to trade him. Interesting. I guess we'll see what happens. But the last tag news is the Steelers related. Their reports came out that the Steelers are expected to use the franchise tag on Bud Dupree, the edge rusher, in case of long-term negotiations failing. I don't think that's really surprising, and I think that a lot of people kind of saw this coming.
That makes sense. I mean, it would have kind of hit us in the face if they didn't do this. Like, they surprised us with, like, franchise tagging Javon Hargrave or something like that. So then this made sense.
There's no way the Steelers were going to let him walk after putting so much into him for 5 years, and he finally breaks out in year 5 just to let him walk 1 year later.
Say that again?
I was saying the Steelers, there's no way the Steelers were going to let him walk after investing so much time into him, waiting for him to break out, and then he finally breaks out. There's no way they were going to let him walk after just 1 year.
Yeah, no way. It was expected that he'd get this franchise tag.
Couple quick footnotes. The Bears are expected to be adding a veteran quarterback in free agency with more starting experience than Chase Daniel, who's been there the last 2 years. Someone that might be able to take over for Mitchell Trubisky if he continues to struggle. Guys with names floated around include Ryan Tannehill, Andy Dalton, Case Keenum, and even Tom Brady, among others. Any of those names sound interesting to you?
I find Andy Dalton to be interesting because I heard that they are in trade talks and they are fighting with the Panthers. The Panthers also want Andy Dalton. Another name that I saw floated around was Derek Carr, because the Raiders have a massive interest in Tom Brady, so it sounds. So Derek Carr might be gone from there, so he might be a name that the Bears are looking into as well.
Stuff that we'll all keep an eye on. And then a sad footnote, former Steelers quarterback Landry Jones of the Dallas Renegades re-injured his knee in the XFL this weekend. That same knee forced him to miss the opener, and it could force him to be out for the rest of the season. So that's a big old rip for good old Landry.
It's not like the worst injury in the world, just with the XFL season only being 8 weeks or whatever it is. I actually forget.
It's 10 weeks, but they're 4 weeks in now.
They're 4 weeks in now, and he had the meniscus tear, which only takes 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. But if it's at its worst, it's going to take him to the end of the season, which sucks for him. Only wish the best for him.
Absolutely, but it means your boy Philip Nelson's going to get another shot.
And man, San Diego Fleet, let's go.
Alrighty then, any closing thoughts here before we wrap this one up today?
Yeah, just some names on the trade block. The Bengals don't know what they're doing, and they're trading their only good offensive lineman. Or they're not trading him, I'm sorry. He's in trade talks so far in Indianapolis. They're trying to get rid of Cordy Glenn. Then also offensive line, the Panthers are shopping 5-time Pro Bowler guard Trey Turner. So there are two names that might be traded when we get to the free agency period, March 18th. So look out for those names. Gotcha.
Well, in the meantime, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. If you have any questions about the show, feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com and check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. We'll be back probably later in the week talking about quarterbacks as we continue to move along with our pre-draft process. We appreciate your listenership, and we appreciate you supporting the podcast. Thank you so much. And excited to be looking into prospects now, and we'll be doing quarterbacks next. Any early thoughts on the quarterback class, Austin?
The quarterback class is very small this year. I felt like there weren't that many prospects. I'd have to go back and look to see how many prospects there normally are, but I felt like last year there was more than a page of prospects to look at. And there was only one page on NFL.com. So I felt like this is a smaller class. Also,
PSA, the Steelers aren't taking one.
What do you mean? They're not going to trade into the first round and get Tua Tagovailoa?
Tua Tagovailoa, yeah. They're going to trade.
I can't say his name yet. I tried my hardest. I haven't. So, ladies and gents, we have the document started for season 2, and since I don't watch college football, I had to have it abbreviated on the season 2 episode. I have it written down, Tagovailoa. There we go. I have it written down right next to his name so I could say it. I tried my hardest. I should have just said Tua.
If you're curious, you could always just look up like Alabama highlights or something like that. That could help. I like that he's lefty. I feel like we don't get to see a lot of lefties.
There's not many in the class. That's for sure, and it's not common in the NFL.
So, anyways, we'll see. We'll be talking quarterbacks next time, but in the meantime, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Take care.
Bye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.